Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to this session on innovation in small and society publishers. My name is Emma. I am from 67 Bricks, but I am also the chair of the Membership and Marketing Committee at ALPS, and so also on the board of directors. And I'm really thrilled to bring this panel to you today of wonderful publishing professionals who are all championing innovation, doing interesting things in a variety of sizes of organisations. I think back to Sarah Fricker's introduction yesterday, and she talked about this conference really being on the theme of practical implementation. And so what I really want for this session is for you all to leave with an idea or inspiration as to how you can move forward that thing that you really want to try or do in your own organisation. And I want to hear the perspectives from these women as to how they've done it individually. And then I'd love to hear from you, either your own challenges, if you want some advice, if you want some tips, or just general questions about process. Any of it, the floor will be open kind of fairly early in the presentation. So we will start off with a quick introduction from each of our panelists, and they will also give a very lightning introduction to the thing that they have been working on that they want to share with you today about how they've been innovative. And then we'll open up the space, and yeah, we'll take it from there. So without further ado, please introduce yourself and your innovation.
Yeah, thanks, Emma. So I am Joanne Walker. I'm one of the co-founders of Becaris Publishing. So I work alongside some people you may know, Laura Dormer and Phil Garner. And we launched Becaris Publishing about 3 years ago. So we are a very small niche publisher. So we publish a journal called, very lengthy name, the Journal of Comparative Effectiveness Research. It's basically within the health economics field. And we also, alongside that journal, run a companion sort of digital platform called the Evidence-Based. So I'm going to talk about really how we have taken the audience of the journal and built this sort of community site to sort of support the journal, but also that now it's its own sort of independent publishing platform on its own. And I know there's been quite a lot spoken about sort of community platforms, so I think this is quite a nice case study to sort of talk about really how you can build a community around a journal, regardless of what sort of area you're sort of working in. So quite early on when we, the journal, I'm going to call it JCER because it's a very long name to say, that has been going for about 11 years, and sort of 2 or 3 years into the establishment of the journal, we recognised that there was quite a sort of niche community within health economics, the field, who really wanted sort of accessible, engaging content. So we came up with the idea of developing the evidence-based, as sort of a digital platform as a way to sort of build on the content that's published in the journal, but also add more content that this sort of community of, academic researchers, policymakers, industry colleagues, patients, all are interested in the field of health economics. So, we can, on the evidence base, we can publish news. So we see a news article that's released, say, 9 o'clock on a Monday morning. We can then cover that in the evidence base, and it's published later that day. So it offers a much more agile way of covering relevant content, much more easily than you can do within the journal platform as well. We can also create more accessible content like webinars. We do sort of plain language summaries, and we also do expert interviews as well. So what we found as well is that we sort of can listen to our audience and then create content that they want. It could be that there's like a really complicated area in health economics, and we think, actually, maybe they want to do an infographic around that to help the sort of, the audience understand it, or they might want a video, so we can sort of help them work on that content and publish it on the platform. And what's good as well is that we can take an article that's published in the journal, and then also the next step, publish it in an interview on the digital platform as well, and the evidence-based. So it was a way of authors to sort of explain their content in a way you can't do within the constraints of a scholarly article. So it's a really nice way of just giving them another voice to their research. And it's also reciprocal because the audience of the journal of the JCER they read an article in the journal, but then they also see the content that's published on the evidence-based. They can, and then go and read further content around that subject. So it helps them really sort of build, their knowledge around a subject beyond the article that they're coming to see as well. And we also like to create a sense of sort of FOMO as well. So if people aren't coming to our website or not publishing with us on the evidence base, it's like, well, why aren't they doing it? If they're, you know, if they're an expert in the field of health economics, they should now be coming with us and publishing their thought leadership or something with us. So I think it's really helped to sort of drive the audience of the evidence base, but then also of the journal as well. So, you know, I know that there's been a lot of talk. Godwin said it's about partnering with people in the field, and I think that's really what we do as well, is we sort of take their ideas and we look at them and think, actually, maybe they come to us with an idea and we think, well, would it be good as a bit of content on the journal? Or actually, would it be better if they do both? They could do an article in the journal, and they might do then a series of interviews on the website, helping to explain the content further. And we've done that quite a lot. So we've done we do a spotlight ongoing at the minute in a rare disease, and somebody's published 4 papers in the journal, and they're also building a whole new sort of content campaign around that content. They've got webinars, they've got a video, there's a written interview. We're also running a survey for them to try and help people understand the content a bit more. So it's a really, you know, nice way of sort of just adding content around a journal. And because it's quite a niche area as well, we've really built on the community. And I think that's where, you know, innovation can happen from publishers.
Great. Yeah.
Thanks. Hi, I'm Ann Michael, and I work at the American Institute of Physics Publishing. So AIP Publishing is a wholly owned subsidiary of AIP, publishing you know, high quality, I can't even talk today, scholarly journals, conference proceedings, and other services, all in service to the global physical sciences community. And I think that when we first started talking, the thing that I really wanted to talk about was that anybody here, anyone in this room can innovate. Your organizations can do this. And I think that, so like my underlying theme is, what trips us up a lot of time is thinking that we have to do it all by ourselves. And so what I'd like to talk about, there are actually 2 different instances, both related to our product innovation function that we started at AIP around how to partner. And I don't just mean partnering in the classic sense. What I mean is for us to understand what we have to offer. We have a brand, we have trust, we have content, we have subject matter expertise, and understanding what our customers need and what our audiences need to understand who out there is also capable of providing the things that we don't have. And as an example, one instance where back in, oh gosh, right, so GPT 3.5 came out in November of 22. And in January and February of 23, I was talking to some folks about a peer review assistant and what could we do with peer review? How could we break this down? No one wants to take the place of an editor, but what can we do to help them? And so I started to talk to Hum. I actually started to talk to Dustin Smith and then to more of the folks at Hum, and they started to have an interest in this too. And so one of the things we said is, well, we have subject matter expertise, we have content, we have editors, and we understand how to manage that process, how to introduce things to them. You want to develop this, and you need to have content to work on to make sure, you know, to figure out how to get this to work. And so we started, long before their product was launched, working on these things. And the benefit to us was that we were learning and understanding how to apply a very critical technology to a very critical problem, and one where we wanted to try to alleviate some of the pressure in the system. And they were getting content and engagement, real engagement from us. Later, as the process went on, it was introduced to the Purpose-Led Publishing Group, which is ALPSP Publishing, and American Physical Society, APS. And we, again, even increased the amount of content that they were exposed to. But what I think is unique about this is that it was truly co-product development for more than a year. And in that process, there was an acknowledged structure for how we would share risk and reward. It wasn't simply, oh, they're picking our brains, they developed this product and they're off and running. It was that there was a benefit for us on the longer term as well for interacting and providing that. And it was very interesting because this became a model in our product innovation team, which I kind of use the word loosely because it's like, you know, it's one full person and a partial people, because like many of you, we don't have 10 people to focus on product innovation. But we started developing other ideas and prototypes of our own, one of which I can't really talk about yet, but we're getting to the point where we will be able to discuss it. And what we realized is what we were developing was bigger than physics. And so we are now putting together prototypes and actually seeking partners and funding. And the funny thing about it is, it isn't about us owning something. It's about us understanding that there's reciprocities in the market that can help us get where we want to go and help someone else. If there's anybody here from a startup, I'm sure they would probably tell you that one of the first things they need is their first customer. They don't have that. That's extremely valuable to them, the ability to refine their product in a meaningful way. And so that's something now in our product innovation team that we're focusing on. Where can we be the first customer? We may have a prototype ourselves that we are introducing, or it may be that someone else has something that would really align with our strategy, that we could be their first customer for some kind of a mutual benefit. So we don't have to do it all ourselves. Of course, we were laughing at the fact of having notes. I've just blown through all of my notes, and I hope I stuck to a little bit to the structure Emma put forward. But the whole idea is, if our mission is to accelerate discovery in the physical sciences and to support our communities, the best way to do that is to interlink with other people that are trying to do the same things and to do it together. It enriches the product, it makes it more useful to the community, and it helps take the burden and the pressure completely off of us. And so the one last question that Emma had asked in her little outline was, what changed? And I think that's what changed. We have started to reassess how we define risk and reward. We've started to come up with a method, a way of approaching and interacting with people that is beneficial to both parties. And it really is a cultural perspective too. I think that there's a very big difference between buying a service from someone or and expecting it to be 95%, and developing a product with someone. That's very, very, very different. And there will be ups and there will be downs. There will be things that work. There will be things that don't work. So we're developing that kind of mentality and understanding so that we don't show up as just trying to get a good price on a product that exists, but as a partner that's helping to build something that will be useful to a broader community.
Yeah, and that absolutely ties back in with the fabulous keynote we had yesterday around, is that me? Is that my hair? Sorry. Deep understanding with your community, but having a product methodology where you are kind of being agile, as you would be in the tech world, of developing something rather than, as you say, taking something off the shelf and kind of leaving it as done. I think that's really important. Shanaz.
Hi everyone, I'm Shanaz and I'm Director of Research and Publishing. I haven't got any notes, so I'm going to try and ad-lib it, so apologies. I was going to talk about AI podcasts, but I think Bone and Joint have done such a fantastic work, and actually we spoke to them and we have also implemented that. It's been a fantastic learning experience. But the project that I'm actually going to talk about is about the one that came to us from our community in dermatology, and it's called Get Data Out. And it was this fantastic idea, and it's a unique collaboration. And I think everybody's talked about collaborating and working with your community. So our dermatologists, and skin cancer is, got lots of data. There's a lot of huge incidents, but when you look at the data, you always just hear about melanoma. No one knows about the other types of skin cancer data types. No one knows about the incidence. No one knows about the prevalence. And we had access to the skin cancer data set, which is publicly available, is a national data set. And then we also had access to our wonderful dermatologists who are epidemiologists and clinicians, as well as the BAD got an analyst in-house. And they helped build this tool, which is part of the NDRS Get Data Out project for different skin disease, for different organs, but they didn't have skin partition. So we worked with all the analysts over several months to develop this partition tool. And I don't know, I think if they can pull up the bubble and you can see this visualization tool, which is really fantastic when and it opens up like that, so you can see the different types of skin cancer incidents. This is freely available. So anybody in the public, you can download the Excel spreadsheets if you are a data geek, and I know some people are. So if you want to go in and look at the data and incidence and prevalence, feel free, geek out. And I think it's a wonderful collaboration because the clinicians don't really understand enough about the data, and my apologies if there are clinicians in this room. And the analysts did, and so there was this real partnership working where the analysts would challenge the clinicians when they would say, oh, can we do this? Can we do this? And they were like, yes, but why would you want to do that? And how far can you go with it? And we can partition to a certain level. And I said, after that, they would say, well, you're going to lose granularity, or the data is not actually going to tell you much. So this is how far you should partition to. And so I think this was a fantastic collaboration. And I think, Anne, you've mentioned about, like working in partnership. We didn't have we didn't have the technology, or we didn't have, but the NDRS website team, they had the tools and the technologies. We had the knowledge and the specialists that we could get. And then we had an expertise also brought in to kind of help layer that on top of that. And it was a fantastic project that we've built, I think.
Great. Nicola.
Okay, so I am Nicola Davis, and I'm a senior publisher at IOP Publishing. So IOP Publishing, I think, would be considered a medium-sized society publisher, and I head up the environmental portfolio. So the environmental portfolio at IOP is a relatively young portfolio. We've really invested in that portfolio over the last few years with quite a number of new journal launches. And with that, it has brought about an opportunity for us to look at our open data policy. So we currently had a policy where we encouraged authors to share their research data. However, when we looked into what the environmental community was doing, it kind of led us to think that we really did need to look at what we were asking of authors, and it led to us piloting an updated policy in April this year. So on 2 of our environmental journals, we now require that authors share their data underlying their research findings, whether that's the data, software, code, etc. And the reason why we did this, and I think it was mentioned yesterday in the lightning talk, it really does, with the sharing of data, it leads to like greater transparency, increased trust in the research that we're publishing. And the reason why we did it as a pilot study to begin with, and again, I think this comes back to what was said in the keynote speaker yesterday, it really was about just making sure we've got our assumptions correct. We wanted to check that we didn't put off authors. We wanted to check that our submissions still maintained. And we also wanted to check that we've got our internal processes correct, because with the change of policy, we had to change some of our workflows. We would just, want to check that we'd got that right. And we also had to monitor how much time was being spent, making sure that authors were adhering to the policy. And when we introduced the policy, we did have great feedback from the community. It's very much, they said it's very much needed. We haven't seen a change in our submission patterns, which is really good. And in terms of next steps, we've really got to think about how we do roll this out further. And again, it was mentioned yesterday, like the scalability of it. How do we make sure that authors are adhering to our policy? So with this, we're still very much at the beginning. There's still a lot of work that we need to do. But I do think it's our first step into the data sharing for IOP.
Lovely, thank you all so much. I'm happy to open the floor now to questions. I have some anyway, just in case. Does anybody have any questions for our panel? We see any? Oh, yeah, lovely. In the corner there.
It's a question for Anne and Nicola. Sorry, it's Tasha from Countermetrics, because I am reliably always going to ask a question. You talked a little bit about purpose-led publishing, and I'd love to hear more about that initiative, because I really do think that societies collaborating and working together is one of the ways to maintain a sustainable publishing ecosystem in that format?
Sure, I'll start. Gosh, I think we've been doing this now for it's been a year and a half at least, almost 2 years. And so it's like anything else. We've started to figure out, well, each society, what can we do together? How do we amplify each other's voice? How do we stick within the proper guidelines of what we share and we don't share? And we've come up with different streams of work. And one of the streams of work actually was the AI stream, which was when AIP kind of pulled the work we were doing into PLP. And so the prototype that we executed was with all 3 societies. And we did that together. We've also done some education in Global South and in some other places. We've done some work on looking at where we can align policies and guidelines such that we're approaching things in the same fashion. We try to have 2 or 3 different streams of work that we're doing together. And the whole idea is that we can have more of an impact if we work together. And I'm not sure if there's anything, we could talk more specifically, but if Nicola, you want to add to that?
Yeah, and I just think also it was just such a strong message to the community that, you know, there were publishers coming together and really working to, you know, promote the areas of research. And, you know, we were saying, you know, like all our profits, it does go back into the society. And, you know, it is the science that is at the forefront, and it was really nice that publishers could come together and say that, and it really did have an impact on the community as well.
May I ask a follow-up? Have you thought about, for example, some kind of consortial purchasing of technologies and services, or a model like the Geoscience World model where you could have almost a hub for all physical science content? That feels like a logical next step.
Mm-hmm. So what I can tell you is that some of the streams that we were talking about of work did involve things like infrastructure and things of that nature. It's been harder to figure those things out, quite frankly, to get them off the ground, because all 3 organizations have their ways of doing things. And it's a very big lift to start to think about any kind of shared infrastructure. It's a big lift that also doesn't necessarily have that return that you would think. So is it the best place to invest your time? And honestly, Sasha, we struggle with that, like thinking about that. So none of those things have necessarily pushed forward, except in the case of the peer review assistant, which is Alchemist Review now for Helm, and also involves grounded AI. That is something that has progressed somewhat, but it is on the table. It's just not something that we've been able to push forward and prioritize.
Any other questions? Oh, one there.
So with these kind of things, Jacob Weller Plus, we always talk about the successes that we have in sort of the innovations. What sort of setbacks have you had, and how do you sort of like go, actually enough is enough when we're trying out this new thing? Where do you go, actually we need to shelf that and try something else?
Good question. Who's one? Yeah, go for it, Jane.
I think, I think possibly when you sort of, especially if it's an innovation with a new technology, you could sort of spend 6 months looking at that, looking at how you could use that technology, and then something else comes to take it over it. So you've spent all that time researching it, figure out how to use it, but then there's the next big technological innovation that comes in and sort of supplants what you're doing. So I think it's almost being more agile than you ideally want to be, sort of thinking about this new technology or whatever the innovation is and saying, right, okay, let's just run with it. And I know you do need to sort of, figure out if it does work. You need to really sort of start with why you need to do that innovation. It could be a shiny new project that you're really passionate about, but actually no one else wants it, will use it, would ever sees the reason in it. So I think you need to sort of balance that, but also sort of trying to get that innovation off the ground as quickly as you can. That's what I think.
Shanaz?
Well, just to add to something that you said about whether it's failed, like the Get Data Out project, and I think I was discussing it with someone else. Someone said, how do you measure whether it's worked or not? And I think I'm quite embarrassed to say that we can't get the analytics behind it. So we're not able to see how many people are actually downloading the data, and we've put all this data accessible and available, and we want policymakers to use it. And the partnership, comes with a funding cost. So the society comes back to me and says, well, we funded you now, how far can this project go? And I think the next thing I've got to go back to the partnership and say, look, you now need to show real impact. And that's the next job for us to do. So in a way, I'm not saying we failed. I'm saying we failed to show impact because when we started off, we didn't really think about impact. And that's something in research, I think you're a bit blindsided. You kind of want to do this thing, but you don't really think about how are you going to measure that impact. So that's been a big learning curve for us, I would say.
Just to add to that too, so in our product innovation team, we actually have a stage gate process, and many things that start don't get progressed because it doesn't seem to be a need, there doesn't seem to be enough of a need. If there is a need, it's too small, things of that nature. But the other thing that's been fun working on the peer review assistant is we are getting lots of feedback, and sometimes features that we think are like really cool, there's not a need for them, or maybe not with the current audience. So a great example of this is we have, our first audience has been editors, mostly editors doing triage on manuscripts, looking at citation analysis and other things. Well, because of a latency that had existed in the system, they were getting summarizations of manuscripts and key claims after they'd already read the entire article. So rather than helping them kind of prepare to read and poke around and do what they needed to do, they were like, well, this is not useful to us at all. And what we realized was, well, there were two things going on there, that it might be more useful to a peer reviewer than an editor, and two, the latency was undermining the use of the feature. So there's always those kinds of things that you're learning, and then there's sometimes things that you just have to say, no, we just have to stop. But it's a really big problem outside the innovation team, even in the organization as a whole, just stopping things that have existed for a long time that may not be optimized anymore.
Can I ask Anne a question, actually?
Go.
So in your trials, when you were trialing out, did you, was there problems of homogenization? Because the large language model kind of looks at large data sets, all your content, and then the reports that it was producing, was it?
So, well, the way that this works is this is a manuscript that's coming in, so it's not, and the summary is of the manuscript, so it's not like it's homogenizing, it's only focusing in on that manuscript. There were lots of adjustments that Hum did, and I don't know if anyone is here from Hum, they may not be in the room, and they could talk to you about the technology behind it. We did have one issue that was addressed where it was almost like the summary at first was too, I don't know how you say it, I don't want to say lower level, but it was too generic. And so we had to get more specific, and we wound up coming up with something we called an advanced summary, which was much more targeted toward a technical expertise audience.
Right.
Sorry,
Go for it, yeah.
Another question. So with those summaries, would you then ever, if that paper then progressed to being published, would you then ever publish that summary, because it's sort of like a plain language summary, publish that alongside the manuscript?
So we have not gotten that far yet, but that's an excellent idea. So when we look at what's happening now with, and again, I have to stop calling it the peer review assistant because it is Alchemist Review. What we're doing now is we're even thinking about, well, can we take those summaries and some of the key claims and actually use them in communications to potential peer reviewers so that they understand what this, before they see the whole manuscript, here's what this is about, and we can understand if there's interest or not. We've also been thinking that as time goes on and we develop a fuller feature set, that we could use it in peer review training to even help people understand, well, how do you do a peer review and what does a good one look like? And we can use but as we do peer reviews, we kind of have labeled data of manuscripts and how effective they were and what people found in them. Right?
We have just 5 minutes left, so I'm just going to ask you all one very quick lightning question, and that would be, what would be one small thing that you would offer as advice to our audience today that they could take home and start doing innovation within their own organisations? I'll start at the end. Yeah, go for it.
For me, I think sometimes starting small it lowers the risk, it lowers the cost, it then enables you to check your assumptions, and then it also prevents perhaps getting too far down the line and realising something doesn't work. So my thing would be sometimes it is okay to start small. It doesn't need to be that big, amazing end product straight away.
In my case, I would say talk to your community, and I think we did talk to our community and we did listen, but I think I would say also think about the end goal and how you're going to measure the impact.
Yes and yes. What I would add to that, thinking about partnerships, you really need to find like-minded, similarly cultured organizations, or you'll spend a whole lot of time just understanding how you all function, and you may find out that you don't function compatibly. So I would invest the time up front to know that when you're looking to partner, that you are approaching things with the same vein, with the same level of risk tolerance, with the same attitude towards sharing, et cetera, and you don't run into like roadblocks later on.
Yeah, I agree with all of that, and I think it's it's really understanding why you want to do that innovation and who it might be for, and then putting yourselves in the shoes of the people who the innovation is for, and then thinking, well, actually, if I was going to be using this, would I use it? How would I use it? That sort of thing. So I think thinking from your end user and then working backwards, I think would be a good start point as well.
Fantastic. Thank you all so much. We've got a couple more minutes left. If anybody's got any other thoughts they'd like to share. I personally think the idea of partnership being really powerful. I know I now work for a technology company, but my previous life was in society publishing, and I understand how difficult and challenging getting above the BAU